Hello everyone. Tonight I will take you on a journey into a place that defies the very laws of nature, a town that hides in plain sight, yet exists outside the boundaries of what we know as real. It is said that deep in the folds of forgotten maps and erased records lies a settlement so strange, so disturbing in its simplicity, that those who stumble across it often wish they hadn't. The story is whispered between travelers, spoken quietly by those who claim to have been there, though their eyes hold a haunted look that betrays something they cannot explain. This is the tale of the town where no one casts a shadow, and if you are brave enough to listen until the end, perhaps you will understand why so many choose silence over confession when it comes to this place. It begins with a man named Elias, a restless soul who made a living by traveling from place to place, collecting folklore, forgotten legends, and stories that locals swore to be true. Elias was not a skeptic, but neither was he a gullible fool. He knew that every tale had a seed of truth, no matter how distorted it became with time. His journeys often took him to rural villages, to remote regions where the modern world felt like a distant rumor, and it was in one such journey that he first heard of the town with no shadows. He was in a small roadside inn, the kind where the wooden beams creaked and the air smelled faintly of smoke and damp soil. A storm had rolled in, heavy and merciless, trapping travelers inside. Elias, notebook always at hand, struck up a conversation with an older man whose eyes were clouded with cataracts, but whose voice was sharp and heavy with unspoken burdens. Over mugs of lukewarm ale, the old man leaned closer and whispered, "If you want a story, boy, I'll give you one, but don't go chasing it. Don't go looking, because once you find it, you'll never truly leave." Intrigued, Elias pressed him, and with a reluctant sigh, the man spoke of a place far from the main roads, a town whose name had been forgotten or perhaps deliberately erased. He described it as ordinary in every way except one. No matter how bright the sun or how pale the moonlight, no shadow ever fell upon the ground. People walked the streets with bodies intact, yet no shape followed them, no dark twin stretched across the cobblestones. "It looks wrong," the man said, his voice trembling. "It feels wrong, like looking at a painting where something vital is missing." When Elias asked how he had seen it himself, the man only shook his head and muttered, "I made the mistake of wandering too far one night. I found it, or maybe it found me." That was all Elias needed to hear. Against the warnings, against reason itself, he decided he must find this town. Something deep inside him pulled like a thread unraveling, demanding that he see it with his own eyes, that he prove to himself whether it was myth or truth. He waited until the storm cleared and then set out, guided only by the vague directions the old man had muttered in his half-drunken haze. For days Elias wandered, leaving behind paved roads and entering paths that narrowed into overgrown trails. Villages became scarce, then vanished altogether. His supplies dwindled, yet he pressed forward, driven by the strange magnetism of the tale. It was on the fourth night, under a pale crescent moon, that he stumbled upon it. At first, he thought it was an ordinary town, a scattering of houses with slanted roofs, streets paved with uneven stones, lanterns glowing faintly in the night. He felt an odd relief, thinking perhaps he had wasted his time on nothing more than superstition. But as he stepped closer, the air grew unnervingly still, as if the wind itself refused to enter. The silence pressed against his ears, heavy, suffocating. And then, when he saw a figure cross the street under the lantern's glow, his breath caught in his throat. The person walked casually as though on a late night errand, but the ground beneath them remained bare. No elongated form stretched behind, no flicker of shadow followed them. The light of the lantern should have carved a dark silhouette across the stones, but there was nothing. Elias blinked, rubbed his eyes, convinced it was some trick of fatigue. Yet when a second figure emerged from a doorway, the same impossible absence greeted him. His legs weakened, a primal fear crawling up his spine, but his curiosity was stronger. He stepped into the town. The streets were empty save for a few quiet figures moving about their business. None of them spared him a glance, as if strangers were a common sight. Elias walked slowly, each footstep echoing unnaturally loud against the silence. He tested it himself, standing beneath a lantern, then beneath the moonlight, and his stomach twisted when he saw it. He too cast no shadow. He lifted his hand, waved it before the light, but the ground remained stubbornly bare. His heart hammered in his chest. Something fundamental, something that should never be tampered with, had been stripped away. He wandered through the streets, notebook forgotten in his pocket. He wanted to speak to someone, to ask what this place was, but every instinct told him to remain silent. The townsfolk moved slowly, their faces calm, but there was a lifelessness in their eyes, as though they were acting out routines rather than living them. Shops stood open, though he saw no real exchange of goods. A bakery displayed bread, but no warmth or scent came from it. A butcher's stall hung with meat that looked oddly stiff, almost like wax, and then he noticed something more chilling. No laughter, no chatter, no sounds of life. The people moved, but the town was quiet in a way that felt inhuman. Even their footsteps, he realized, made no sound against the cobblestones. Only his own echoed. Only he seemed tethered to reality. As Elias wandered deeper, he felt eyes on him, not from the people who seemed indifferent to his presence, but from somewhere else, something unseen. His skin prickled with the sensation of being watched, studied, weighed. He turned corners, walked alleys, but the feeling grew stronger, pressing against him like a physical force. It was then he realized that the absence of shadows was not a simple anomaly. It was a wound in reality, something unnatural that pulled at everything near it. He tried to leave, but each turn seemed to lead him deeper into the labyrinth. Streets repeated, houses blurred together, and the more he walked, the more he feared that the town was folding itself around him. Panic gripped him when he returned to the same lantern he had stood beneath before, its flame flickering dimly. No matter which path he chose, it brought him back again. Desperate, he approached one of the townsfolk, a woman with pale skin and hollow eyes. "Excuse me," he whispered, his voice trembling. "What is this place?" She stopped, turned to him slowly, and for a long moment she only stared. Then, with a voice that sounded faint and echoing, as though spoken from somewhere far away, she said, "You should not have come here. Shadows are the soul's anchor. Without them, you will forget who you are." Elias staggered back, his heart pounding. He wanted to demand answers, but the woman had already turned away, walking as if the conversation had never happened. The words echoed in his head, "Shadows are the soul's anchor." What did that mean? He glanced down at the bare ground, at his feet that left no dark imprint behind, and felt a rising dread. Was he losing something already? As night deepened, Elias grew weaker. His memories began to blur at the edges. What day was it? How many nights had he traveled? He fumbled for his notebook, only to find the pages blank, every word he had ever written gone as though erased. Terror clawed at him, and he realized the town was not just a place. It was a hunger, consuming the very essence of those who entered. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement, a shape, a flicker of something dark stretching across the stones before vanishing in an instant. His breath caught. In a place where no shadows should exist, he had just seen one. And it was not his. Elias froze, his chest tight, his breath shallow as he stared into the empty street. The flicker of darkness had been unmistakable. Something long and thin, like a shadow stretched across cobblestones. But in this town that should have been impossible. His eyes darted wildly, scanning every corner, every crevice, but nothing remained. The street was bare, still, suffocatingly silent. He whispered to himself, almost as if to anchor his own sanity, "I saw it. I know. I saw it." The air seemed to grow heavier. The lanterns flickered weakly, their flames bending as though to some unseen breath. Then came the sound, a soft dragging like fabric sliding across stone. Elias's throat tightened. It was coming from behind him. Slowly, with every nerve screaming for him to run, he turned. At first, there was nothing, just the empty path stretching into darkness. But then, just beyond the light of the lantern, he saw it. A shape darker than the night itself, sprawled along the ground, thin and twisting like smoke made solid. It was a shadow, yet no figure stood above it. It moved independently, slithering across the stones like a predator circling prey. Elias stumbled backward, his pulse pounding in his ears as the shadow twitched as if sensing his fear. Suddenly it darted, disappearing into an alley. The silence rushed back, even heavier than before. Elias pressed a hand to his chest, trying to steady his breathing. What in God's name? He whispered, but his voice was swallowed by the void of the town. Determined not to lose himself completely, Elias forced his shaking hands to grip the notebook again. He opened it, hoping against hope that words would appear, that his mind would anchor itself to reality. Yet the pages remained empty. No notes, no sketches, no proof of who he was or why he had come. A rising panic seized him. Was the town erasing him piece by piece, starting with his memories, his work, his very essence? He needed answers. He needed to confront the people, the hollow-eyed residents who wandered as though sleepwalking through lives that no longer belonged to them. Gathering what courage he had, he approached another figure, a man standing outside what looked like a church. The building was strange. Its steeple pointed high into the starless sky, yet no cross adorned it, no symbol at all, just a blank, jagged peak. "Please," Elias begged, his voice breaking, "tell me what's happening. Why are there no shadows? Why do I feel like I'm disappearing?" The man turned slowly. His face was pale, lips colorless, eyes empty like windows looking out onto nothingness. For a moment, Elias thought he would receive no answer. Then the man's voice came, soft, heavy, hollow. "The town hungers. It takes what you bring. First your shadow, then your words, then yourself. We are what remains." Elias's stomach dropped. "But you're still here." The man's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if not for its emptiness. "We are shells. Shadows feed the town, but the town keeps us to wander. You are still fresh. You have not yet been emptied." The weight of those words sank into Elias's bones. He staggered back, shaking his head. "No, no, I won't let it take me." The man tilted his head, a faint glimmer of pity in his hollow gaze. "No one lets it. It simply does." And with that, he turned away, entering the church and leaving Elias trembling in the street. That was when the dragging sound returned, the same soft scrape of darkness against stone. Elias spun, and once again he saw it, the shadow, only this time it was closer. Its edges writhed and curled like smoke caught in water. It stretched long, impossibly long, before pulling itself back, almost playful in its menace. Elias staggered backward, heart hammering. The realization struck him like ice. The shadow was hunting him. He bolted, his footsteps echoing harshly against the dead streets. He turned corners, dashed through alleys, but no matter where he ran, the dragging sound followed, steady and relentless. He could feel it behind him, gaining, slithering closer with each breath. He burst into a wide square where a dried-up fountain stood, its basin cracked, water long gone. He spun around, gasping for air, and saw the shadow coiling at the edge of the square like a beast preparing to strike. Desperate, Elias scrambled onto the fountain, clutching its stone edge as if elevation might protect him. "Stay back!" he shouted, though the absurdity of warning a shapeless thing made his words crumble in his throat. The shadow twitched, then stretched forward, reaching for him, and then something strange. The lanterns around the square dimmed as though their flames were being devoured. One by one, they sputtered out, plunging the square into almost total darkness. Only the faint, cold light of the moon remained, casting its pale glow across the stones. Elias looked down, his heart skipping, because beneath him, faint and fragile, a shadow now stretched, his own. For a moment he almost wept with relief, but the relief curdled into terror when he realized the truth. The shadow at his feet was not his own. It moved when he did not, stretched when he stayed still. It was mimicking him, tethering itself to him, pulling itself into his body's outline. The more it clung, the colder he felt, as though ice was crawling up his legs. No, he screamed, thrashing, stomping at the ground as if he could shake it loose. But the shadow only clung tighter, its tendrils weaving into his form, drawing strength from him. His vision blurred, the world around him tilting, and in that moment he heard voices. Hundreds of them, whispers in unison, rising from the darkness around the square. They spoke no words he could understand, yet their meaning pressed into his mind, heavy and suffocating. You are ours. Elias fell to his knees, clutching his head, the whispers drilling into him. He wanted to scream, to tear himself free, but his body was growing weaker, his breath shallow. He thought of the old man at the inn, the haunted eyes, the warning he had ignored. He thought of the notebook, now blank, his life's work erased as if he had never lived. And he thought of the townsfolk, wandering empty-eyed, shells of who they had been, their shadows stolen long ago. This was his fate, unless he could break free. With the last of his strength, Elias forced his gaze upward. The moon hung above, pale and watchful. Shadows belonged to light, didn't they? They were born from it. If he could reach the source, maybe he could sever the thing that clung to him. Staggering to his feet, Elias stumbled from the fountain and ran, the shadow dragging behind him, fused to his body. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed height, needed closeness to the sky. His legs carried him to the church, the tallest structure in town. Its door loomed wide, already open as if waiting for him. Inside, the air was colder, heavier. Candles lined the walls, but none cast shadows. The pews were empty, save for figures sitting motionless, heads bowed as though in endless prayer. Elias ignored them, sprinting down the aisle toward the stairwell that wound upward into the steeple. The dragging followed, the whispers swelling, louder, more insistent. Up, up he climbed, lungs burning, legs trembling. At last, he burst through a hatch onto the top platform of the steeple. The night air hit him, sharp and freezing, but above him the moon shone brighter than ever. Gasping, he raised his arms toward it, as if begging the heavens themselves. "Take it back," he cried, voice breaking. "Take it back, it's not mine." The shadow at his feet writhed violently, resisting, pulling harder into his form. Elias screamed, the sound tearing from his chest, but as the moonlight bathed him fully, something shifted. The shadow shuddered, its edges fraying, its grip faltering as though the light was burning it. With one final cry, Elias wrenched himself forward, hurling his body against the steeple's edge. There was a tearing sensation, like fabric ripping, and suddenly the shadow detached, flung backward across the platform. It twisted and writhed, shrieking without a mouth, before dissolving into smoke that scattered into the night. Elias collapsed, shaking, his chest heaving. For a moment there was silence. Then, slowly, he looked down. And saw nothing, no shadow, not the parasites, not his own, nothing at all. A hollow despair filled him. He had driven it away, but in doing so, he had severed himself entirely. He remembered the woman's words, "Shadows are the soul's anchor." Without one, he was untethered, adrift. His victory was meaningless. The whispers rose again, faint this time, almost tender. "Now you belong." Elias stumbled back down the stairwell, but the church was empty now. The pews, the figures, they were gone. Outside, the town lay silent, its streets endless. No matter which way he turned, the path stretched on, leading him in circles. He realized then what the old man had meant. You never leave. You only wander, emptied, forgotten, until you too become one of them. Elias dropped his notebook. It hit the stones and lay open. For the first time since entering the town, words appear, written not by his hand, but etched by something else. They all come, they all stay, and they all forget. His tears blurred the page. He wanted to scream, but the sound caught in his throat. He looked down at his feet one last time, at the endless bare stones, and saw nothing. And that was the last anyone ever knew of Elias. Some say he still wanders those streets, a figure with no shadow, waiting for the next traveler to stumble into the town that should not exist. If you ever find yourself walking under a pale moon and notice that your shadow has vanished, run. Run and never look back, because once the town finds you, it never lets you go. This was the story of the town where no one casts a shadow. Remember it well, for shadows are more than darkness. They are your soul's tether. And without them, you are nothing but an echo.